Sorry, husbands.
I was going to ask you about the corporate income tax next, but we'll skip that because
corporate income tax. No, there is no such thing as a corporate income tax.
Right.
Who pays corporate income taxes?
Consumers.
We do.
And workers.
And workers.
Because they receive lower wages.
That's right. They receive lower wages, and so no, all income taxes. Everybody is gone.
Of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, please cite a specific right that you are especially passionate about and believe Americans have lost or are losing as a result of government action. Just pick one. I know they're all important. Or at least they're important to me.
Oh, can I pick 3?
Just pick one.
2?
1.
I'm playing Abraham here.
Pick an amendment because there's several rights in some of the amendments.
Oh,
but that's
dear.
Okay. Well, here, let me ask you this.
All right, I've got
what do you think we're losing or have lost?
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay. If I had to pick one, I would probably say in the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Because the freedom of speech is also the underpinning to the freedom of practice of religion, freedom of the press, the right to express your grievances. Without the freedom of speech, you have none of those. And so if I had to pick one that's probably the most important, it'd be freedom of speech. As a matter of fact, I wrote about that in one of my newsletters here just a letter or 2 ago. And by the way, you can go to our Facebook page, and you can also go to our website. You'll see everything that I've written, and I write a lot. And you can see there are some of these things that I've written and talked about. Now, I'm not a regular politician. I don't just give political pundits, and sound bites or bullet points. I will give you detailed writings as to what I believe and what I think is wrong. And I will quote Madison, Jefferson, Hayek, von Mises, and others like that.
I think you've done a pretty good job of that tonight, right? So, are you familiar with Agenda 21, and what is your position regarding it?
Agenda 21.
Be brief. I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Do you know how long
I could talk forever?
Yeah, I know you could. And if we had Zach here, he could go on for even longer than us combined.
That's true. That's true.
Agenda 21 was something that Bush Sr. did us no favor in signing us up for. It is a drive to take away our American sovereignty and to create a one world government.
Where does it come from?
It comes from the United Nations. And my thought on the United Nations is, it's time we got out of that. We need to quit funding it. And if they want to stay in New York City in that high-rise fancy building, that's their business. But you know what? We really don't want to be a part of you. So why don't you take that and go somewhere else, and we'll turn that building over to Donald Trump and let him build it into a casino.
Well,
and we can make tax revenue off of it.
That takes me to another question, and since you brought it up. What obligation should the United States have in the United Nations? It was originally formed as a diplomatic means to resolve global issues in a peaceful manner, as you well know. So whether they're military, financial, or diplomatic, what should we have there?
Resolve world conflicts peacefully. How's that worked out in the last 50, 60 years? Yeah, right. Yeah, duh. No, I don't see where we need to have any role in the United Nations. It is a cesspool of Marxists who only want to take from us. They're a bunch of leeches that want to suck us dry. That's the whole point of Agenda 21. The United Nations is corrupt. It's wasteful. It's worse than our government, and it's not very good at doing that type of stuff. And so I don't have any role in that. Now,
what would be a first step? Because we can't go from, being basically the father of the UN to, I'm saying politically maybe I should say, what would be a good first step?
Quit writing the checks. Serve notice that we are no longer going to be funding all this stuff that you're squandering and wasting money on that has no business. Washington, when he left the presidency, warned us about entanglement and foreign alliances, did he not? And look at us today. We've got alliances all over the place that are not necessarily in our best interest or for our defense.
Yeah, that brings me to another question. Ron Paul gets a lot of flack as he's a pretty well-known libertarian, even though he runs as a Republican. But he has been known to defend the Constitution and cite many of the examples you have, not to put you in the same category politically or anything.
Well, I admire his stand for fighting for the Constitution. I will give him his due on that.
Right. So he's gotten a lot of flack for his stance on foreign policy, specifically what he refers to as the military complex. You know, the embassy in Iraq cost, you know, $700–800 million to build, is staffed by 3,500 security personnel. In fact, there's more people there than the troops we left in Iraq after leaving, just to guard one building. Well, it's not really a building, it's more like a big farm. But so he's got a lot of flack for that. But so what's your position on what our role in foreign policy should be? You know, we have 190 military installations, 30,000 troops in South Korea, 50,000 troops in Japan, yada, yada, yada. So how would you articulate a strong position to the American people?
Do we really need to have all of those? Now, a lot of those bases, admittedly, are maybe just fueling depots that are very small. But I think we need to have an overall strategic review of our entire foreign policy strategy. What is it we're trying to do? What is the role of our military, first and foremost, to protect our freedom and liberties? We are in a world economic environment where we've got to keep certain sea lanes open for our benefit. But you know what? A lot of things, if we would just take care of our stuff here at home, like drilling and getting gas and other precious minerals, we wouldn't need to worry quite so much about keeping the Straits of Hormuz open. Let France and some of those others that we're shouldering the burden for take care of that. That's where they get most of their oil and stuff from. Now, does that mean we want to become isolationists? No, we can't do that. We're, you know, in this world nowadays, it's a different world than our founders were in. That's true. Where we were protected by two oceans. We learned in 1941 that an ocean as big as the Pacific didn't protect us. But there are places where we can cut back, and we need to. We cannot afford to be the policeman of the world. You know, there's another term that's not very nice about what our military is doing. It's usually used in a derogatory way. When you've got troops protecting other countries instead of them sharing their fair burden of that, you know what it is? It starts with an M. Mercenaries. Our troops, Mel was in the Navy. Rick Rose was in the Special Forces. My son was in the Marine Corps. How many veterans do we have here today, by the way?
Thank you. A round of applause there.
Thank you for your service. And happy Memorial Day. Because there's a lot of veterans who are not sitting here because they gave it all that we might be. But our troops are not mercenaries for the world. They're not. And therefore we need to review what do we really need to do in the world that is in our strategic interest. And then cut back on that which does not meet those criteria.
Earlier this year, Congress passed the FAA bill, which funds the FAA, but included in this bill, as they so commonly do, it included as a task for the FAA to figure out how to incorporate thousands of drones for use in U.S. airspace. Police departments are already testing these drones. There's been reports of that, including the city of Arlington, you know, which is in our congressional district here, as you well know. These drones have all sorts of technological capability, thermal imaging, all sorts of things like that. So do you see that as a threat to our Fourth Amendment rights?
You're serious?
Well, I designed this to ask three people questions. I didn't think they all were going to be, you know, constitutional conservatives.
Hey, let me add. Hey, folks, bear with me. Bear with me here. Listen, I'm going to ask everybody here.
Good question. Good question.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask everybody here. You've been listening to me for what now? 35 or so minutes, maybe?
Yeah, some of these are redundant.
Okay. You folks, year and a half.
Scribble that.
You folks answer the question for me. What's my answer? You've heard me speak now. What do you think I'm going to say?
What was the question?
Does the use of drones with all this thermal imaging capability over U.S. airspace, does it pose a threat to our Fourth Amendment rights of privacy?
See?
There we go.
That
was easy.
That's my answer. And
so let me ask you another question.
But I read an article today where they talked about the drones possibly, you know, the capability of them being armed.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Armed drones that they're... Yeah.
They take people out all the time.
You know what? What does the city of Arlington need a drone for? Anyway, can I ask that question? Yeah.
They brought it down for the Super Bowl, and they got a grant.
For what? A camera
They
angle?
got a grant. They can't fly in really bad weather. They're nothing more than little
Well, we'll do well in Texas. I guess that's one benefit of tornadoes. We'll just knock all those drones out of the sky.
There is only one place that I think a drone is useful in our nation, along the border. Restricted to a certain area along the border and no place else, and no law authority, be it local, city, county, federal, whatever you want to call it, whatever the authority to fly a drone over anywhere inside the continental United States, outside that border, along the border. Period. And you know how we stop it? What does the House of Representatives control? The purse. And what do those drones cost? Money. You cut the cotton picking funding off of that stuff, and that puts an end to it.
Yes.
Energy costs continue to increase in this country. The administration has been heavily subsidizing solar and wind projects, all sorts of other, quote, green initiatives, while at the same time creating new regulations that impose costs on the coal, oil, and gas and other industries. Fox News reported that coal was producing about 44% of our electricity here in the United States. What actions can Congress take to make energy production more efficient, if any?
There's several things it can do. One, it can return federal lands back to the states, because it's the state's land to begin with. You know what the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, you know what lands the Constitution authorizes the federal government to have? Postal roads, post offices, arsenals, forts, shipyards, and any other necessary buildings to carry out their enumerated powers of authority, like courts and stuff. That's it. They are not authorized to have millions upon millions of acres of land. I think it was Utah, or maybe you remember.
Nevada's 95%.
Nevada's like, I was going to say 85 or 97% federal land. That's nuts.
That's a fact.
Yeah, you return that back to the states. And then the states can decide if they want to develop their resources. And guess what the citizens of those states are going to tell their representatives that are closer to them than the bureaucrats in Washington? Yeah, buddy, drill.
Yeah.
And drill safely, right?
And drill safely. Yeah, and you know what? Companies that don't drill safely, how long are they going to be around? Again, free market. People will shut them down quickly.
Don't look at China.
And so, the first thing they do,
They're communists.
basically, is we return and again, this is stuff that we need to do. Is it going to be easy to get done? No. I'm not a Pollyanna thing. We're going to go up there and we'll get all this done. It's going to be difficult. But that's where you put the control of the land back to where it belongs. Secondly, again, what does the House control? The purse strings. And who is driving all this nonsense? An out-of-control EPA. You cut the funding for that rascal. And that, again, is going to be hard, but if you get enough of us up there, we can do it. And that's what you fight for. You start, and here's the thing we have to do. I'll wrap this up this quick. Real quick.
Okay. I believe you this time.
It's not enough, it's not enough to say, we're going to get rid of this department or that department. Because they were all created by legislation. They all have issued these regulations that have the effect of law, unconstitutionally, I might add. And so it's not enough for somebody to say, I think we've got to get rid of the Department of Education. We've got to get rid of the EPA. We've got to get rid of the Department of Energy. You've got to get rid of the laws that gave them their life to begin with. So the place to begin is repealing the laws that authored them. And then you get rid of the regulations that came afterwards. And that, coupled with cutting the money, is how you get rid of this stuff.
Thank you. It's a good answer.
This is a family
very
feud.
thorough.
Good answer, good answer. This isn't Family Feud, is it?
What do you think about the United States' relationship with Israel? And, there's been a lot of talk about what to do with Israel and Syria and Iran being a nuclear threat. And so, what would your policy position be as a congressman in foreign policy as it relates to Israel?
Israel's the only, you might say, quasi-democratic country in that region of the world. They have a socialist system. They're heavily into socialism, just like Europe is. But they do exercise free principles. And they're an ally. And therefore, we need to be willing to stand up and back them up as much as is necessary to protect their liberty and their freedom. But that is not our primary goal. Our primary goal is defending our freedom. And if we see a smaller country getting overrun and we have a treaty with them, we have given our word that we will help you. Now, unless we renege that treaty, and therefore we keep it in place, we're obligated to help them out, defend them, because our word should be our bound, just like it is with any of us. And if we don't come to the aid of somebody that we have told, we will come to your defense if you are attacked, then our word means nothing. But that doesn't mean we need to go around the world making all sorts of treaties to defend everybody, because we can't.